used to be that I sat up there with my father on Yom Kippur. And it was more than 35 years ago that we started coming here. Honorable guests, rabbis, Mayor Kassim. No fancy speeches, no big words. That was the mayor's admonition. 35 years ago, this day, in front of the Israeli parliament, with a picture of Theodore Herzl behind him, Anwar Sadat spoke to the Israeli people. He came to Jerusalem the day before and he said, "I come to you with peace and I come to you with justice." Menachem Begin, Israel's prime minister, responded by saying, "We welcome you, Mr. President. We, the people of Israel, we, the state of Israel, hope in the future that we will have good relations with our neighbors that will end in peace treaties." Israel bought 35 years, 35 good years. The lesson that we learn is that in the Middle East, leaders are institutions, institutions are not leaders. Today we sit here and we say, what will Morsi do? How will he react? Will he be pulled by his feelings, his ideology, his philosophy toward the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, a dislike, if not passionate desire for the destruction of the Jewish state? Or will he be the pragmatist who will rely on advice that says, you can't alienate the United States, the IMF, the World Bank, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, or the United States because they provide you 65% of your daily wheat intake and you only have 21 days in storage? Or does he say, we're going to align with Hamas, we're going to let it fly, and we don't really care? I think it's more the former than the latter. In the remaining time, I'd like to talk to you about motivations and impact of this event in the course of modern Israeli history. Every state, every government has the obligation to protect the security of its citizens and to assure the prosperity of those citizens. Every state has the right, the natural right, to protect those citizens under all circumstances. Israel decided to attack Gaza for several reasons. First, the inflow of weapons that had come from Libya after the fall of Gaddafi was increasing noticeably. The amount of weapons that were coming from Iran had increased noticeably. Hamas was using its center in Gaza as a focal point for direction of Islamic radical politics throughout the Middle East and was having an increasingly destabilizing effect on Israel's neighbor to its east, Jordan. And Israel felt it could no longer tolerate the attack, the indiscriminate attack upon its civilians, not only in the south, but now within range of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The desire to degrade Hamas militarily and its capability was also necessary prior to potential Israeli action against Iran tomorrow. For Israel faces Hezbollah in the north with its 30,000 rockets, Hamas in the south, and Iran far to its east, 1,100 miles away. If Israel could destroy the option of the south being a nemesis to Israel in the eventuality of going to Iran and then having to withstand retaliation, it was probably a worthwhile option. Israel was always also able to test the effectiveness of the new Iron Dome, that anti-missile system. As this unfolds, what we have seen is a lot of speculation about tomorrow. And since we're in the midst of it, to come to any conclusion now, to make any prediction, is really foolhardy. And this is what we do know. We do know that Israel will no longer tolerate. It may have to go back in 3 years if it doesn't end the nemesis of Hamas now. We know that Hamas would like to continue to control Gaza. It would like to be the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. It would like to bring down Abbas in the West Bank. It would like to keep control over the economy. And it would like to avoid at all costs negotiations and recognition of the State of Israel. And it will probably dance on a pen in order to do so. Mohammed Morsi, the Egyptian president, has no love for the Egyptian-Israeli treaty, but will, for the reality of Egypt's needs, empty it of its content, but not abrogate it. He does not want to give up his alliance to the Freedom and Justice Party and the Muslim Brotherhood and for what they stand, but he does want to get calm over Sinai, that has become a home for Salafis and jihadists and Islamic extremists. So he will remain ideologically committed, but pragmatically flexible. And if that sounds inconsistent, watch. People have argued that Morsi could turn into Khomeini, that he already has begun to influence how the press is handled and who writes. He's made his adjustments in the Egyptian military, as well as putting his own man into the prime ministership. He's overseeing the evolution of a new constitution. The difference between Iran and Egypt is that Iran had one variable that Egypt does not have, and that is oil, and that are petrodollars, and that's the ability to go it alone, and Egypt does not have the ability yet to go it alone, and probably won't. Today, I was interviewed on one of the local TV stations. And I was asked about Israel's disproportionate response. You know, sometimes you give an answer, and then you get in the car and you kick yourself around the block, and you say, if I'd only said it then. Well, I hope that TV station is here tonight. I said it wouldn't be disproportionate if I were living in Sandy Springs and someone from downtown Atlanta were attacking me. I would think nothing about going after him or her or whoever was responsible. I don't care if it was 5, 10, or 15 people. I was not going to have my family put under duress. What is disproportionate? Unfortunately, Israelis have lost their lives. Unfortunately, more than 100 Palestinians have already lost their lives. But 37,000 Syrians have been killed and brutalized by their own dictator within 18 months. That's a ratio of 1 to 4,000. That's disproportionate. And as I drove my grandson home, I started thinking, what is it about Israel that puts it out there as a stomping ground? Well, it's good for Arabs to kill Arabs, and no one intervenes. It's not good for the Jewish state to defend itself. Israel's original purpose was so that Jews could have a choice. They could take destiny into their own hands. They could engage in self-determination. They could have a place where Jews could feel secure and preserve their identity. They got engaged in state-seeking, state-making, and state-keeping. That's not disproportionate. That's the right of every democracy to protect itself. So when someone says to you tomorrow or the day after, or if this goes on, God forbid, for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, isn't it disproportionate? Just remind people about the double standard. Once again, on behalf of my family, I want to thank all of you who have been friends for many years, for giving me once again an opportunity to address you. My only fear is this: we may be back here in 6 months or less because of a man named Ahmadinejad. Let's hope and pray it's not. Happy Thanksgiving.